Hello, and welcome everybody to the Create Your Healthy Diet webinar. My name is Claire, and I'm very, very happy to be with you here for this webinar, where we'll be getting stuck into some great dietary aspects to create the most healthy and vital version of you. So, a little bit about me before we jump in. Again, my name is Claire. I'm a naturopath and I have a Bachelor of Health Science. I'm currently in clinical practice part-time here in Sydney in a clinic that specialises in genetics. So I see a lot of interesting people there and health presentations there. And I also work part-time as well in my virtual clinic via my website, clairesholisticpursuits.com. There I also blog and share lots of information and free resources on health and wellness, which is my number one passion. And I'm also the co-author of a series of food as medicine meal plans called the Medicinal Meal Plans. And I just really believe that natural health just makes the most sense. And I think it makes the most sense when it comes to truly healing and creating lasting change in the body. And as much as we've conquered this planet, we are still a species of it. And I really think because of that, we respond best to things that are also natural. Natural things are the things that we best uptake and respond to in order to heal. And my outlook on health is really, really simple, especially when it comes to diet. I'm a really big advocate of being healthy, but I'm not saying that that you have to fast or that you have to do juice cleanses or that you have to be a real vegan or that you have to own a Vitamix or a Thermomix to be healthy. You don't really need any of that. It's just really about focusing on whole foods and creating the type of diet that works really, really well for you so that you feel really healthy and vital and well. And along with this no bells and whistles approach, it really links in with the concept that health really doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be confusing. I really feel the more simple you keep it and the more simple and the more you shut out the noise, the healthier that you can be. Because when you get a really, really good foundation right, everything else kind of just falls into place. And we all deserve to be healthy and we all deserve to feel so radiantly well and vibrant. And we have to remember that health isn't just the absence of disease, it's feeling lots of energy and having glowing skin and feeling vital and well on top of not just feeling sick. So in order to feel that, I really want to emphasize that no one does life or health quite like the way that you do it. No one metabolizes or digests or processes things in the body just quite like you do. It's different to your partner, to your kids, to your best friend, to your neighbor, to the other people reading the same health blog as you or magazine article. And that's why cookie cutter approaches almost never work, or they never give us the lasting results that we are looking for, which is why I'm a very big advocate of individualizing and tailoring things specifically for you. So tonight I've broken my talk down into four main sections. We'll leave some time for questions at the end if you have any crop up. But my aim is to have you walking out of here, or walking away from this webinar, knowing a little bit more about the foundations of nutrition and what is actually making up the foods that you are eating. Then how to actually take this knowledge and build a healthy meal easily and make easy changes to your diet using that knowledge. What type of foods are best suited to certain conditions, we'll touch on at the end. And then also at the end, my top 4 foods to avoid. And if you want to dive in deeper with this and feel really, really confident that you're hitting the nail on the head when it comes to your diet, I also have a special announcement for a new offer that I've crafted that we'll touch on briefly at the end as well. But for now, let's get started. So with my perspective of health, of keeping things really simple and stripped back, I really say that all you need to really do is start with your meals. So much of our health is put in the hands of what we choose to put in our mouth. Our food either contributes to disease or it helps to fight and prevent it. Every single snack, every ingredient that you use to cook with, every single meal that you order out, everything that you bake, cook, fry, grill, contributes to your health or it contributes to disease. And if we back that up with a healthy lifestyle, I think it's awesome just to see how far those two things alone get you, a healthy diet and a healthy lifestyle. If we put the responsibility back onto these two facets of our lives to keep us healthy, instead of relying on doctors or on their prescriptions, I honestly believe that 90% of chronic disease that is happening in the Western world right now would just start to clear up and disappear. So put the blinkers on and do what works for you. Don't do the shoulds, ignore what doesn't feel right, focus what feels right for your body. In the world of social media, in the world of online, there's a million and one ways we are being told how we need to do life, how we need to do health, how we need to do exercise, how we need to look when we're exercising, how our kitchen's meant to look when we're Instagramming the picture of our smoothie. You know, cookie cutter diets, eating plans, generalized information about health. Think about it. Is it really taking into consideration how you're currently feeling, what foods are right for you, what foods aren't right for you, what you thrive on, what you react to, what foods you don't like, how you space out your meals throughout the day, what your work schedule is, your morning routine, when you exercise, the cravings you have, how you feel after you eat, your energy. There are so many things that make up you, make you perfectly unique and you. And this is why you have to play an active role in your health, and why I want to give you the tools to understand nutrition on a deeper level so that you can play around with your meals and find the right combination of food that works for you, that doesn't adhere to anyone else's rules, but you create your own diet that works for you. So, getting stuck in. It's really, really interesting to ask my patients how they're eating already, or asking a group or a bunch of people that I'm talking with too what their actual eating styles are, because you get the biggest range of answers. You get people that kind of shrug and say, oh, I don't follow anything, or again the shrug that will say just normal diet, normal Australian diet. Or on the other end of the spectrum, you get someone who's saying I'm really strict with my diet, you know, I only eat organic, or I'm vegetarian, or I'm vegan, or I'm paleo, or I'm gluten-free or dairy-free. And I think that this really highlights, and it's good to do this exercise with yourself and with the people that you are surrounded with as well, because it just highlights that we are all so different. We all feel good and we all thrive on different things. So how you digest and break down your food and then metabolize it is 100% different and unique to someone else. So when you find what that good base is for your diet that feels really good, you allow all the other parts of yourself and your lifestyle to have a really solid and grounding base to stem from. And these are things like your energy, your sleep, your mood, your digestion, your immune system. If the diet and your lifestyle is right, then everything else just kind of tends to figure itself out, and they don't tend to cause you too many issues. So when we look at food from the perspective of nutrition, we can normally break it down into two main groups. So every single food is comprised of either macronutrients, which are our big nutrients. They are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Water and fiber also technically included there. And our micronutrients are our small nutrients, and they are vitamin C, zinc, vitamin B6, and I would also like to add in there phytochemicals. So what I really, really like to focus on and spend a bit of attention on is making sure that you're getting your macronutrient balance right. Because if we get this right, you will get 80% of your diet right straight off the bat. And all you'll need to do is basically fill in the blanks. And I really think that we've lost touch with the fact that our macronutrients are actually nutrients. They're the biggest form of nutrition that we consume. And that's because that they've all been demonized at one point. You know, carbohydrates for a long time are totally seen as the devil, and that, you know, you have to not eat carbs, and eating too much of protein for a while, they said that it could damage certain body systems, and that, you know, be wary of super high protein diets. And then fat, of course, is a massive doozy about how we're all going to drop dead of a stroke if we eat fat, and saturated fat is the devil and it's going to kill us, and we're going to get cardiovascular disease and high cholesterol. And these ratios and percentages and regimes of how we're meant to be eating all of those foods, I think it can get really confusing. And when human beings, when we get overwhelmed, we kind of just go down into shutdown mode. And I really don't think it has to be that way, because we are human beings. We are a species of this planet. Our medicine is meant to come from the planet. Our medicine is meant to be our food. Our macronutrients are the biggest form of food or medicine that nourish and sustain us. Carbohydrates are not the devil, fat is not going to kill us, and protein is totally, totally fine to consume. It's not our job to demonize these nutrients, but instead just to find the combination that works best for us, because they can certainly feel like demons if we aren't consuming them in the combination that is best suited for our body. That's when we can start to run into some troubles. So being really knowledgeable around our food, what we don't feel good on, what we do feel good on. Maybe if you eat too many carbs, you may feel bloated, or you might have an energy crash an hour later. Or if you don't eat enough protein or fat, you might get some sugar cravings. Or maybe sometimes some people, they eat way too much protein and then they feel really kind of sluggish and slow. Take this knowledge and be really empowered around your food choices and design your menu around what you feel really good on. And I think my story back when I was studying at uni is a crystal clear example of what can go wrong when you eat the macronutrient balance that isn't right for your body type. So in my first few years of studying, I was a vegetarian at the time, and I had eczema since I was about 3 months old, and by the time I was in my first few years of study, it was actually on about 75% of my body. It was really, really bad, and it was the worst it had ever been in its life. I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want anyone to see it. I really, really wasn't enjoying it at all. My body and my skin was so inflamed. But along with that, I also had really bad brain fog. I had really bad sugar cravings. I craved stimulants all the time, and I had really bad energy. We used to joke, me and my sister, who was also a vegetarian, that how awesome it was that we got to have a nana nap every day, and how awesome nana naps were. But nana naps might be all very well and good when you're a uni student, but they don't convert so well when you have a full-time job, or you're looking after kids, or you have a really busy schedule and you need that energy to get you through the day. Now, being a vegetarian, if we're not careful and we don't monitor it really well, it can be quite carbohydrate based. And early on in my studies, I still didn't actually have a lot of nutritional knowledge. So without realizing it, I was eating heaps of rice, legumes, chickpeas, beans. I was eating lots of pasta, gluten-free pasta, but pasta, and I wasn't eating anywhere near enough protein and good fat. And this is a really common story that I come across all the time, even for someone who's a meat eater, or they don't like to eat meat that much. I even just scan over their diet when I'm sitting down in front of them, and I said, there's not enough fat here, there's not enough protein here. And eventually it got to a bit of a tipping point where I had to make a decision, and I decided to introduce meat back into my diet and change my eating style quite radically. So I went on to a much lower carb style of eating and really increased my protein and my fat. Within 6 to 8 weeks, my skin, no joke, was 95% better. But on top of that, my sugar cravings were gone. My energy was so consistent. I could not believe it. My concentration and my brain fog at uni was so much better. And I didn't need a nap to see me through the day. And this was all from changing my diet. This was all from changing my diet to eating the macronutrients in the combination that was in alignment with my body type. So this then leads us on to, it's all very well and good to talk about carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, but what actually are they and what foods are predominant in them? For starters, carbohydrates. I want to include carbs and sugar in the same group here on the same slide, because our body eventually breaks all of our complex carbohydrates down into simple sugars in the body. So when it comes down to it, they end up in the same position, even though some carbs are definitely healthier than others. But these are all of your forms of carbohydrates. When someone's talking about carbs, this is what they mean. You've got bread, pasta, oats, rice, all of your types of flours, all of your baked goods that include flour and wheat, all of your vegetarian forms of protein like quinoa and beans and lentils. They're actually more predominant in carbohydrates than protein. And all of your veggie forms of carbs like your potato, sweet potato, and pumpkin. Your really sugary forms of foods, which I think we're all pretty familiar with, all of your desserts, ice cream, lollies, chocolate, soft drink, energy drinks, all of your baked goods again. So it's really, really important, I think, and very empowering to have a very clear understanding of what carbs are, because quite often they can make up the predominant space in a meal or in our diet without us actually really kind of realizing it. Next is fat, and I've broken this into good fats and bad fats. And for our good fats, we've got avocado and coconut. Obviously, coconut comes in a lot of different forms. A full-fat dairy is definitely a good form of fat. Grass-fed meat, I've put up in the good fat section because I'm definitely of the belief that grass-fed, free-range or organic meat is actually quite beneficial if you consume it, in sensible amounts, and you consume ethical sources of the meat. Grass-fed meat I consider to be good fat for a few reasons. A, because if it's grass-fed or organic, the forms of good fats in there, like omega-3, is actually higher compared to grain-fed meat. And it's actually quite easy to track down evidence that now shows and easily dispels that the form of saturated fat that is highest in meat doesn't actually cause cardiovascular disease or negatively impact our cardiovascular health really at all. So from a perspective of fats, meat can definitely be included in there. Then you've got eggs, seafood, olives and olive oil, fish, nuts, seeds, chia seeds and flax seeds. For our bad fats, which I wouldn't recommend eating, which I will touch on later, are our vegetable oils, more commonly known as our cooking oils, and also margarine, which is just basically vegetable oils in a hydrogenated form. So a few resources here that can help you with fats in general. Sarah Wilson, who is more commonly known for the I Quit Sugar movement, on her personal blog, she has talked a lot about different types of meat and how they're raised and fed in Australia. So she talks on her blog, I think it's just sarahwilson.com, about what forms of meat are grass-fed in Australia and what forms of meat are more grain-fed. So that can be really good if you are shopping on a budget, to go to the supermarket and go, all right, this form of meat, it's not necessarily organic or grass-fed, but it is more fed on pasture or maybe only fed a little bit of grain. And then another gentleman by the name of Chris Kresser, he's American, but he writes a lot of very easy to digest but completely scientifically backed up articles, and he's written a fantastic one of the different fats found in meat, and that the saturated fat found in meat is not damaging to our cardiovascular health. So when we're talking about fats, this is what we're talking about. Now, finally, we've got protein. Our grass-fed meat pops up in there again. It probably is more predominant in protein than it is in good fat. And also nuts, seeds, dairy, eggs, chia seeds, a small amount of soy, and then your vegetarian forms of protein like your quinoa, your beans, and your legumes. So you really need to look at these and maybe analyze what you've been eating yourself and see what macronutrient your diet is potentially predominant in at the moment, and then use this information to go away and then create the meals that you cook or the meals that you buy to have the right form of macronutrients that you do feel really good on. So you can now see that if you're, at the food court at lunchtime and you're buying your lunch and you wanted to buy a healthy option, which is fantastic, and so you're at the salad bar and you've got one salad that's a chicken salad with avocado, walnuts, and goat's cheese. And now we can see that that's quite predominant in protein and good fats. Whereas if you were then to look at a salad that's made up of rice and quinoa with herbs and roast veggies, it's a very carbohydrate predominant meal and food. So look closely over your diet in the next week or so, or maybe have a look back over your diet over the past week and see how you feel after you eat certain foods. You know, maybe if you were to have breakfast and you stayed filled till lunchtime, or maybe you eat breakfast and you need a snack by 10 a.m. Or maybe you have lunch and then you get that 3 p.m. energy slump. This is all due to coming down to that balance of macronutrients that you're eating and whether or not they're right for you. So someone, if they were to have eggs and avocado for breakfast, they might still stay full till lunch. But if someone, grabs some toast or banana bread from the place where they get their coffee in the morning, they very easily could be hungry again by 10 a.m. And I think it's really, really important to highlight just what sugar is doing in the body and just how unbalancing carbohydrates and sugar can be for the body. And I have a bit of a diagram here that walks through sugar spikes and sugar crashes and just highlights what's happening in a really, really simple to understand way, which is really fantastic. So basically, when we eat a carbohydrate predominant food, like the list that we touched on earlier, our blood sugar spikes and it rises, and then the body kind of realizes, oh, there's too much sugar in the blood right now. I need to get rid of some of it. I need to get this back to normal. I need to get things back to equilibrium. And so it will send some of the sugar in our blood into our cells to be used and burnt for energy to keep us going. But then it might still have some left over, which you can see in this curve up here. And then it doesn't really know what to do with it, but it doesn't want to get rid of it because it doesn't know when we might come across some carbs again, which are a really good fast energy source. And so it sends it to our cells to be stored as fat. And this is how sugar and carbohydrates can make us fat, not fat itself. So then after it's done that, your blood sugar level drops, and it drops to the point where now the level of sugar in the blood is low. And then your body is triggered again, and it says, oh, there's not enough sugar in the blood now. I need to get some sugar into the blood ASAP so I can again establish balance and equilibrium. And so that's where it'll kick in a massive sugar craving. And all of a sudden you find yourself dreaming of a Kit Kat, dreaming of some pasta, wanting some pizza or a donut that you haven't eaten, in 6 months, and you don't eat that kind of stuff, but your body is crying out for a really, really fast energy source. And this happens every single time we eat a carbohydrate predominant meal. So if you are eating, toast for breakfast, a biscuit for morning tea, a salad sandwich for lunch, or some pasta for dinner, these blood sugar fluctuations could potentially be happening 3 to 5 times a day. And this becomes really stressful for the body and really fatiguing, and it can actually inflame the body. So we have to look past a sugar craving and see what our body is actually really, really asking us for. It's not telling us that we want carbohydrates or sugar, but actually that it just wants good and steady and constant blood sugar levels. And this is what protein and good fat offer us. They slowly enter the bloodstream and they keep our blood sugar levels consistent. And if you keep working on it and keep your meals being predominant in good fat and protein, then you'll find that 3 p.m. sugar craving or energy slump that so many of us get will completely disappear. On top of it, us as ladies need protein and good fat for so many systems in our body to function really well. For starters, we need it to balance and to make our hormones. So if we aren't eating enough fat and protein, we aren't making the level of hormones that we might need to be functioning optimally. We need it to keep our blood sugar levels constant, like we just touched on. We need adequate levels, especially of protein, to have really healthy skin and hair and nails, to have really consistent energy levels, to keep our digestion really happy, and also to have really strong bones, which is something that's really, really important. And these are such important nutrients that can easily get forgotten because our society pushes such a big emphasis on carbohydrates. And whenever anyone tells me that they don't eat avocado or the yolks out of their eggs or coconut because, fat is bad for you, I just feel really, really sad because their bodies are missing out on key nutrition, all due to outdated principles that fat is bad and carbohydrates are good, which we now know is not the case. And there are so many people thriving and feeling so good eating diets that are more predominant in protein and good fat. So this takes us to applying this to your food and designing meals around these choices and playing around with the balance to see what ratio and what combination works really right for you, because like I touched on earlier, it is going to be different for every single person. Our bodies are designed to run off protein and fat for fuel. So the addition of carbohydrates into our diet is actually really new, and our bodies haven't really figured out how to do it properly yet. So before you worry about getting enough vitamin C or magnesium on food, make sure that your macronutrients are aligned. Because simply from changing your diet, a lot of symptoms that point to dysfunction in the body but can't actually be diagnosed as a disease really will clear up. A doctor might tell you there's nothing wrong with you if you have issues with sleeping, or if you're stressed, or if you're always fatigued, or if you have dull skin or acne or bloating. But how much of these could be cleared up, to the nth degree if you really just look at your diet and see where it could be contributing to your energy peaks or your crashes, or unbalancing your hormones, or throwing out your blood sugar levels and not giving your body the nutrients that really it's asking for. So I've created a bit of a visual guide or an infographic that I'm going to put up on my website in the next few weeks, but I thought I would just highlight to you guys now, and I will send you the link to it so you can download your own copy as well. And it just puts into pictures and really easy to understand short snippets the ways to create a healthy meal step by step using these principles. And I haven't put amounts, I haven't put gram levels, I haven't put percentages or ratios, anything like that, because I want you to use this to help to design a meal that is optimal for you. And it leaves it open for you to decide the portions and the amounts that you need to use. And I would like to say that these go in order of importance. So I will leave it up for you to decide how much of each you will really need and that work really well for you. So I'll bring it up on a bigger slide now, and I thought we'd just go over a few examples that make it really, really clear on how to implement this and just use it time and time again to create every single meal, but do it in a really easy and non-overwhelming way. So say that we're starting with breakfast and we're going to fry or grill up some breakfast. We could start with step 1 with some veggies by adding in some spinach, some red onion, and some tomato, or even any veggies that you have sitting in the fridge. Step 2, adding in our source of protein. This could be some eggs. So we could poach or scramble up some eggs. Step 3, adding in our fat source. We could then put in half an avocado. And then supporting that with some carbohydrates, we could then have a small piece of gluten-free toast. Now, say you're not a savory breakfast fan and you like more of a sweet or cereal-based thing, we could easily apply this to a different scenario. So step 1, if we went with more of a fruit-based thing, we could use some frozen berries, some chopped kiwi fruit and some strawberries, or some passion fruit even. Step 2, for protein, we could add in a nut and seed based granola, so it's much higher in protein than something that's just based off grains or oats. For step 3, for fat, we could use coconut or a full fat dairy and some chia seeds. And then step 4, for carbohydrates, we could add in some dried fruit or a few oats or some puffed rice or some millet. And moving on to other meals of the day, it becomes even easier for lunch and dinner because obviously we're then more open to having savory dishes. And veggies are much more plentiful in our diets in those meals of the day. So step one for veggies, if we're creating lunch or dinner, we could just have green leaves and any and all type of vegetables that you have. The more colourful, the better. Protein, we have all of our options. We could just go some form of meat, lamb, beef, turkey, chicken, or an egg. Fat, again, we could do some feta or sprinkle some nuts and seeds over the top of it. And then step 4 for our carb sauce, we could just have some sweet potato on the side or a few roast veggies on top, or mix through some cooked quinoa or some lentils, or have them on the side. So if you do this continually with each meal, it's a really powerful way to transform your health and your diet. And think of this as a lifestyle change, as a sustainable change, over thinking about it as another diet or temporary fix. Because finding the style of eating that works for you and your body is the only way that you will ever feel and stay healthy for a prolonged and sustained period of time. And if you just focus on these foods and just focus building from this template, you will naturally just crowd out everything that doesn't work and that isn't serving our health. So that's your processed foods, everything that's refined, all of the sugars, and a lot of the inflammatory foods that can kind of bamboozle and confuse the body, that make their way sneakily into a lot of prepackaged and processed foods today. So how do you think the mix of these macronutrients are sitting for you right now? Do your current health habits provide some links or provide some hints of what could potentially be going on? If you now realize you're eating a really carbohydrate dense breakfast and can see that you have an energy crash at 3 p.m. or at 10 a.m. every day, when then you'd normally go and reach for something sweet, this will give you a hint in the right direction that maybe you need to switch to a more protein or a more good fat-based meal. Or do you have any symptoms that believe that could be potentially related to your diet? Have you tried diets that did or didn't work? What were they rich in? Things like Light and Easy are still based off the very old school food pyramid, where they're very carbohydrate dense. Even Weight Watchers, to a degree, is, a lot of the mainstream one size fits all approaches out there are still working off the fact that whole grains and carbohydrates are really good for us and that we need to eat a lot of them. And then things like the Zone diet or the Atkins diet really, really drop down the carbs and really beef up the protein, but they leave good fat out of the picture. So it's kind of about just finding your own diet and finding your own template of eating. As general points, there's some conditions that or body types that go really, really well with certain types of eating styles. Any inflammation, and inflammation is so far spread in our bodies. That can be joint pain, leaky gut, allergies, asthma, hay fever, autoimmune disease. If there's any inflammation, skin issues like dry skin, dull skin, acne, eczema, or if there's any hormonal issues like painful periods, fertility issues, or low hormones, having a diet that's quite high in good fats will be really, really important for you. If you're getting more of the low energy, brain fog, blood sugar craving picture, then protein is going to be quite important for you. If you're quite active, you might have a physical job or doing, you might be on the move or standing up all day, or if you go to the gym and work out a lot, carbohydrates are actually going to be really, really important for you. And they're going to be really important to sustain your energy levels, because we need to restore our blood sugar levels after we exercise. And carbohydrates also help to carry proteins into the muscle to help them to repair and build with the work that you're doing. Just let it be as simple as focusing on these 3 types of foods. The only thing that I will make exceptions to these rules is my top 4 foods that we really all should be avoiding like the plague. These are the substances that are triggering damage in the body. They're damaging our cells and our body systems, and they're causing so much inflammation. And when we are inflamed, that is when chronic disease pops up and rears its ugly head. So all of the chronic and metabolic and Western diseases that are popping up, diabetes, chronic pain, autoimmune disease, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, high cholesterol. These all have massive roots in these 4 foods. So if there's any foods that you can eliminate out of your diet, just focus on these, and then focus on eating these 3 macronutrients, and everything will gloriously fall into place. So my first food of my top 4 foods to avoid is wheat. And I'm not going to necessarily say gluten. I used to be really, really hardline on saying that everyone, if you're talking about wheat, you have to include gluten. But more and more information is coming to light that the wheat that we consume today is so nasty and is so hyper processed, and the way that it's farmed is so different to other grains, and the way that we even farmed wheat 50 to 100 years ago, that it is causing so much damage in our bodies when we eat it. So for starters, yes, it contains gluten, and if you do react to it, it can be very, very inflammatory to your gut and to your body. And if our gut becomes damaged, we can't break down and absorb our food properly. So you could be eating all of these wonderful nutrients, but if they're not getting in, they can just be damaging our gut further. But like I touched on, wheat is farmed on such a mass scale that they're using this hybridized form of wheat that's been genetically altered so it'll grow and yield more grain, but doesn't take as long. So it's this kind of hybridized short dwarf wheat that doesn't grow as tall, so it isn't as much effort to maintain and harvest, but it yields a lot more grain. And as a byproduct of this, it contains this super starch. It spikes our blood sugar more than wheat has ever before. So like we were looking at with that diagram, we are shuttling so much glucose into our cells to store as fat. This wheat is spiking our blood sugar so high, and all of the health complications that are accompanying it with blood sugar levels, number one of all being weight gain and obesity. So yes, carbs might be associated with weight gain, but this wheat, this commercial and modern day wheat that we're consuming, it is related to weight gain more than ever before. If there is anything that is super fattening, it is this modern form of wheat that we're eating. It also releases proteins, polypeptides, that light up the reward center in our brain, making us want more and more and more and more of this refined carb, and just to get the same hit. So this means that we can crave or binge on wheat containing products and have it feel so good for about 10 minutes. But then, an hour later, 3 hours later, a week later, we're still left wanting more, but we'll need to eat even more of it next time to get the same hit. And these mass farm crops are actually also doused in Roundup, which is a poison, prior to harvesting, because dousing it in Roundup kills it off and actually causes the wheat to release more of its seeds, which is releasing the grain. So that means that the wheat that is making it into our food, into our bread, into prepackaged, biscuits and cake mixes and all those kinds of things, is this wheat. And this is the effect that it's having on us. This wheat, it sounds extreme, but I really like to say it's poison. So if you feel that you react to wheat, try moving over to a gluten-free bread or a really good quality organic spelt or rye bread, and I guarantee you that you will notice the difference. But if you can consistently eat a really low to no wheat diet, your body will really thank you for it, and it will be one of the most potent preventative health things that you can do. You really will be preventing chronic and nasty disease in the future. My next food is 2 and 3 kind of come together, like we touched on before, refined carbs and sugars. Now, with sugar, which I also briefly touched on, we don't really have the appetite regulators and modulators that allow us to switch off from refined sugar and carbohydrates and say, yes, I've had enough, I'm done, I'm full. Back in our hunter-gatherer days, it was such a treat to come across anything sweet. I mean, think about it. All of the sweet things that we eat are man-made. It's really only a little bit of fruit or some wild honey that they would have come across and eaten in such sporadic and random times that they were never consistently eating sweet food and sugar in their diet. And because of this, we never really learnt a mechanism to digest or metabolize sugar that well, because we never really had a need for it. So sugar that we know it today, it causes a big release of dopamine, similar to this wheat in our brain, just like drugs also, that leave us feeling really happy and our mood lifted, which then can create that very addictive pattern, because then we start to seek out that happy and lifted feeling again and again, but we need more sugar for the same thing to happen. And I feel like these two things combined, the addictive nature of it and our lack of appetite regulators, that makes it so easy to demolish a packet of biscuits, a bag of lollies, or a block of chocolate. You know, you'd be sitting down watching a show or snacking while you're at work and look down and you've eaten the whole lot. Whereas we could never do the same with, 2 kilos of steak or a dozen eggs or a big family bag of broccoli, because we have the mechanism in place that lets your brain know when you've had enough and that you're full and that you don't want any more. Sugar is so much harder for that to happen with. And on top of that, sugar can cause diabetes, obesity, huge levels of inflammation, and really big hormonal imbalances in the body. And refined carbs are clearly shown in evidence to trigger an increase in whole body systemic inflammation. So I would really, really recommend that you use more nutrient dense and natural sweeteners like maple syrup, rice malt syrup, instead of white sugar, and literally go to your pantry and throw that stuff away and never ever use it again. And my last one is vegetable oils. Now, these are things like soybean, canola, sunflower, safflower, and corn oils. And this is because they're really high in omega-6 fats. And a little bit of omega-6 is fine. It's just when the oil becomes heated and the fat starts to become damaged and rancid, and if we're consuming too much omega-6, then it can become very damaging and inflammatory to the body. And so buying these oils, we then, take them home and we pour them into our pan to cook our meat or our eggs or our meals in. And we're heating them up to these high temperatures, and they're really becoming rancid. But I've also put a link there to that video that you can see when I send you out the slides. These oils, when they are being extracted from their seeds or from their plants, have already been exposed to super high temperatures that would have already made them rancid long ago before they make their way to your supermarket shelf or into your kitchen. They're chemically extracted. Quite often they use hexane or petrol derivatives to actually extract the oil from the seed. They're then deodorized, so you can't smell them, because you think about it, you can't smell how rancid it is because they take all of the odor away. And then they bleach it so to have a really consistent color. And all of that is in that video there. I would really encourage you to watch it. And then on top of that, we go home and we heat them up again, and then we cook with them. And fats, they actually make up all of the cell membranes, the trillions and trillions of cells that we have in our bodies. So if we're feeding our body a lot of damaged and rancid fats, then that's what we're attempting to make our cells out of. So if our cells are being made damaged and inflamed from the get-go, we really are putting our body on the back foot. So once again, if we're creating inflammation, we're leaving our body open to develop disease and these chronic modern day diseases that are developing. So always stick to cold press oils. That means none of this nasty processing that's occurring with these vegetable oils will happen. The oil's been gently squeezed out of it. And with cooking, stick to butter, macadamia oil, or coconut oil. They're all really stable at high temperatures, so they won't damage. And really, really focus on them to overall decrease your load of vegetable oils in your diet. The thing is, with all four of these things, if you look at a classic pre-packaged processed food on a supermarket shelf, it contains all four of these things. Quite often it will contain refined wheat. So for starters, that's your wheat and your refined carbohydrate in the first place. If any dish or meal or packet requires any form of fat or oil, it will always use vegetable oil because they are the cheapest oils available. And so many products contain sugar. That is a big thing that we've been highlighting in our society lately, especially in Australia. So really it comes down to focusing on the healthy meal builder that we were doing before, because if you're doing that, you're crowding out and eliminating all of these foods anyway. But I think it's incredibly important to highlight just how damaging these foods are and the huge effect that they are having on our health at large. So overall, I just want things to be really, really simple. Focus on your veggies, your protein, your good fat, and your good carbohydrates, and just work and shift and experiment on finding that combination that really works for you. Avoid the refined carbs, the sugar, and the vegetable oils, and your health will seriously thank you for it a million times over. And be gentle with yourself. See any change that you make as an experiment. Be open to changing if things don't work or if they're not working at the moment, and just be really flexible with your choices. If you're going to try and drop down your sugar, if you're going to try and drop down your carbs, I'm going to say that you will inevitably fall off the horse, because we all do. We're all humans. I've been gluten-free for 10 years and I fall off the horse all the time. Don't spend forever flogging yourself. We have the opportunity to start again with each meal, with each snack, with each thing that we choose to eat in our day. And it doesn't mean that you need to wait until next week or Monday to start. Just start with each meal and make the choice at each meal whether you're going to contribute to your health or to contribute to your disease. And as I mentioned at the start, I have just opened up some limited spaces for my latest offering, my naturopathic diet analysis called Designing Your Diet. So if you'd like to kick off any dietary changes that you're going to make on the right foot with my tailored recommendations and support, I would really love to work with you. In Designing Your Diet, I collect a whole bunch of really useful information off you about your diet and your current health and your goals. And then I kind of take a fine-tooth comb to your diet, naturopathically analyze it, undertake a macro and micronutrient analysis of your diet and present them to you in shiny PDF reports. I then make some overall general naturopathic recommendations about your diet and what needs to stay and what needs to potentially be tweaked or changed moving forward to help you reach your health goals. And then I work all of this information into a tailored and unique 5-day example meal plan that incorporates all of these changes. So you are kind of left scratching your head, wondering how to implement it all and what you're meant to eat now. You could also choose to have an implementation session or email support with me, so I can really guide you through any of your big or small questions and really help make this transition really seamless and delicious at the same time. So I will send you through the information on that in the follow-up email, along with the recording and the presentation slides. So once again, thank you so much for joining me, and I really hope you've walked away with some actionable info. You can visit me there on my website. My email address is there, and my Facebook and my Instagram are there if you want to connect by that way. I'd love to see you. And I really hope that we'll be in touch again soon.